person who transcended religion and politics, yani merged the two, was the one who we mentioned a few times. Hafiz Sahib threw the name in earlier as well.
Shah Ahmad Nurani Siddiqui.
Maulana Shah Ahmad Nurani Siddiqui. What a man. What a
Nurani people, just this guy was a giant, and we have never really recovered since he passed until, you know, recent Allamah Maulana Khadim Hussain Rizvi Sahib came along. In the last 5-10 years, somebody who's had a profound impact on within Pakistan, not just Pakistan, the subcontinent, and even around the world. You know, is somebody who's a political voice, more so a religious voice, and who stood for two very key principles. He passed away a few days ago,
a
week tomorrow actually. Look how time goes. And his videos, his clips were going viral. He was inspiring, awakening the hearts of many people. Is none other than Allamah Khadim Hussain Rizvi, rahmatullah alayhi, who Allamah Sahib was an individual, a personality, and a man who epitomized the love of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and put that above everything.
Hazrat Allamah Khadim Hussain Rizvi Sahib rahmatullahi ta'ala alayhi, you've hit the nail on the head. Certainly an inspiration for me. I was introduced to them whilst I was doing a brief stint as an Imam during the months of Ramadan in Ilford, Albert Road Masjid by Maulana Hafiz Jamshed Sahib. I remember sitting in his travel agency in his shop next door to the masjid, and he said to me one day, have you heard this speaker? And I said no, and then he put a clip of theirs on, and to be honest, I was mesmerized from that day onwards. Allamah Sahib, we know, was ma'zur. He had lost the feelings in his leg. He was on a wheelchair from 2009.
So 11 years now.
2009. So essentially from that period when they had pretty much, and that's
iconic.
Yeah.
You know, this is an icon this is a man who cannot walk, who cannot run, who cannot stand.
But he stood
taller than all of them.
He stood taller than all of them.
He moved forward quicker than all of them. And there were two things that for me, what epitomized him that he stood for. The Hafuz Namus-e Risalat and the Tahaffuz of Aqidah Khatm Nabuwwah. Finality of prophethood and the honor and dignity of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, respecting and honoring him alayhi salatu. He was very, very, very vocal. Now, prior to 2015, 2014, we were hearing speeches sporadically, we heard. But he shot in that time frame. Before all that, what was he?
Ustadul Ulama, produced hundreds and thousands of scholars. A profound hafiz of the Quran, a master of the Arabic language.
Profound memory as well.
Wow. Abwab al-Sarf was one of the books that they wrote.
And yes, we will talk about Amirul Mujahideen, Hazrat Allamah Maulana Khadim Hussain Rizvi Sahib, who was iconic and who was a voice for the oppressed, who was a voice for traditional Islam, who was an individual who stood for what he believed.
Defender of Aqidah Khatm Nabuwwah, as you mentioned earlier, an individual who upheld the honor and the dignity of Tajdar Madina Rasul Akram sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his noble companions, Ashabi Rasul and Ali Rasul, the esteemed household of Rasul Akram sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They had the affiliation and nisbat to the Awliya Kamilin. No doubt he himself was Naqshbandi in Silsila. The Bayt was with Pir Sahib, Haji Pir Sahib of Gulhar Sharif, yes, if I'm not mistaken. And in terms of Nisbatan, they had the laqab of Rizvi at the end, which was the nisbat with Sayyidi Ala Hazrat Imam Ahl Sunnat again. He genuinely had pure, unconditional devotion and love for the Prophet ﷺ. This cause and mission which he despite his illness, despite his, Mazuri, he traveled from one part of the Mulk of Pakistan, from one part of the country to the other, despite these challenges and difficulties.
And he had his own political movement, his group called Tehreek-e-Labbaik Pakistan, which actually did well in the last elections. People was awoken.
And there were a lot of, obviously, what's the word?
Rigging involved in the ballot count. In relation to
but he's an individual who in our lifetime has rejuvenated and revived
and realigned
and revolutionized us all with Muhabbat Rasul, Ishq Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and what's our objective in life, and inhe jana, inhe mana, na rakha ghair se kaam, lillahi alhamd, magar agar se
दुनिया से मुसलमान
so that slogan labbaik 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 ya Rasulullah tajdare khatm nabuwat zindabad zindabad. So these are those
slogans which were said to awaken and remind people that we will not tolerate anyone who dishonors, disrespects the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and likewise we will not accept and this concept of another Prophet after Rasulullah. This is not going to happen. And we will stand and be vocal on this, because if we don't, we will lose the core tenets of our faith.
And what's left
then it's diluted, and Allah Almighty will never allow that to happen.
No.
And He will always send men like Maulana Khadim, Hussain, Rizvi, and people who will champion this cause and who will raise their voice and defend these principles of Islam, and that's the job of a revolutionary.
And I think only hypocrites, those who have no real nisbat to the deen, can attack a true revolutionary.
Well, for those who don't, they will say this is a hardline approach. But what you have to understand is sometimes you have to be hard in order for it to be known. If you go down the softer approach, you get washed within the system. You've got to stand out of that system, and you've got Abdul Hamid Kishk and the likes of these individuals who spoke out, who raised their voice. And Maulana Khadim Hussain Rizvi was no different. He was a man who was heard, who was known, who was seen. Anyone who has true iman inside his heart and believes in the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam and Allah Almighty will be deeply saddened with his departure. Why? Because you have to accept that he stood for the correct and true principles. It wasn't about his pockets, it wasn't about him, his legacy was put the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam first, his honor and his defense first, and then it'll be right. And to conclude, legacy. What is his legacy in a few words? Imam Adil, tell us.
Again, revolutionized, rejuvenated, rewoken, a sleeping
nation,
youth in Mulk Pakistan. You've got to look at his janaza. 90% of those who attended were youngsters. Again, mainly aerial views of what we were seeing, but 90% of those who attended were youngsters. So he's an individual who his legacy is being felt, the effects are being felt now, and this certainly will continue to be felt for the foreseeable future. It's our duty and our responsibility as adherents to their mission to continue that mission and to instill the love of the Prophet ﷺ within our hearts, first and foremost, and the importance of defending his honor, not just through a status on Facebook or a post or tweet on Twitter, but rather become those people, as Hafizah mentioned earlier, like Muhammad Ali, who don't just talk the talk but walk the walk, who put their money where their mouth is, a figure of speech. And we've got to be willing to do that. And the least we should be willing to do is sit and talk about these great men of Allah. And again, Mubarakbad to Hafiz Sahib, Didi, and obviously to Imam Sahib. I think he's been really well received. I think for the last 2 hours we've done well, and time has passed. So
and it's fitting that Imam Adil, you actually dare I say this, is you represent and you are of that thought where you will not mince your words, you will always say the truth, speak the truth, though it's sour. And
we live by the hadith sharif, قُلِ الْحَقَّ وَإِنْ كَانَ مُرًّا, that speak the truth even if it is bitter or sour. And the reality is that
bitter truth is always going to be have that effect. And you know, from a personal perspective, as a younger brother, you've always said it as it is. There is no grey area with you. You are quite black and white.
Aapki muhabbat, but again with Amirul Mujahideen, you know, the greatness of an individual is truly understood when even his enemies acknowledge that.
Wow. The people he spoke out against.
Imran Khan, one of the first to tweet condolences regarding Amirul Mujahideen. Deobandis, I don't want to take their names on my tongue, but we know who they are. Others, Ali Hadith, we saw, what was his name? That's the one. You know, we saw TQ come out and Minaj al-Quran. They obviously posted a tweet. Yes, they posted a tweet as well. So again, an individual,
a person who, and Allamah Sahib spoke against them because they were not speaking or vocal for this you know, true mission. In the end, this is what I'm saying, they even know deep down that you have to salute this guy. He risked everything.
जहाँ भी बैठे निशान बयान इन्हें जाना इन्हें माना न रखा गैर से काम लिल्लाहिल हम्द में दुनिया से मुसलमान गया